Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Welcome to Congregation Kol Ami here in West Hollywood, California. My name is Rabbi Ross Levy. I'm the assistant rabbi, and I'm joined on the Biba tonight by our student rabbi, Frankie Salzman. And what a Shabbat we have in store for us this week. We will experience many different types of joy, the joy of welcoming in a new full member of the Jewish community as Ryan becomes a bar mitzvah tomorrow morning. And then, of course, we'll have the opportunity to extend and expand the joy on Sunday evening as we have our celebration of the holiday of Purim. And so let's kick it off with a little bit of singing, a little bit of music, a way of setting aside what may have happened this week, whether it was good, whether it was bad, and just taking a moment to just be together and to experience and create the holiness of Shabbat. We'll begin actually with the insert in your service bulletin with this version of L'chunu Ranana. And you can find the lyrics there. I believe there is a corresponding page number, but honestly, it's going to be a lot easier for you if you just use the insert. So I hope you'll join me in singing along. L'chunu Ranana. Sing out to God, the maker of all, sure and strong. Let all of our creation from mountain to sea hear our song. L'chunu Ranana, yai lai lai yai lai, l'Adonai, yai lai lai. God's light, we rejoice. So now let's listen with all of our hearts to hear God's voice. L'chunu Ranana, I can't hear you. Yai lai lai yai lai, l'Adonai, yai lai lai yai lai.
Invite up Ryan and his family to lead us in lighting the Shabbat candles, his parents Mark Cohen and Tim Jordan, and his siblings Stephen and Christine. You can find the words to our blessing on page 120.
Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu ad l'ikner shel Shabbat.
Amen.
Go ahead and light.
We'll have enough to do tomorrow morning.
That's okay. Go easy tonight.
We'll go and send the blessing and then we'll do the
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu le'adlik ner v'tzivanu le'adlik ner shel Shabbat. Blessed are you who commands us to kindle the lights of Shabbat.
Everyone wants to grab a Kiddush cup.
There should be one for most of you.
Yeah.
We emptied out the cabinets for the Kiddush cups. And we'll join together on page 123 as we introduce the sanctity of Shabbat. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron l'maaseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila l'mikra'ei kodesh zecher l'tziat mitzrayim kivanu v'acharta ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim v'shabbat kodshecha be'ahava uvratzon inchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat lechaim.
Go
Lechaim.
ahead.
You can have a sip of your grape juice, so everyone's aware. And we'll invite all of you except for Ryan to return to your seats. Ryan, you're going to hang up here with us and with Frankie. As we continue to bring in the joy, bring in the light of Shabbat, we now turn to page 138 as we join together in singing Lecha Dodi, this poem welcoming in the presence of Shabbat, the Sabbath bride. We'll be doing verses 1, 2, and 9, and upon reaching the 9th and final verse, we'll invite us all to please rise and face the entrance as a way of symbolically welcoming in this special and sacred presence of Shabbat. Lecha Dodi לקראת קהלה פני שבת לקבלה לך דודי לקראת קהלה פני שבת לקבלה. Verse 1 שמור וזכור בדיבור אחד השמיענו אל המאוחד. אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, לשמו תפארת ולתחילה. לך דודי לקראת קהלה פני שבת קבלה. לך לקראת קהלה פני שבת to. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha ki mekor habercha merosh mikadem nesucha sof maaseh b'machshava tchila lecha tovi likrat kala Shabbat Kabbalah Lecha Tovi Likrat Kala B'nei Shabbat Kabbalah. We rise together and face the entrance. Boi v'shalom ateret ba'ala גם בשמחה ובצולה תוך אמוני עם סגולה בואי חלם לך תודי לקראת קלה בני שבת לקבלה לך תודי לקראת קלה בני שבת לקבלה. Let's do it one more time. לקראת קלה בני שבת לקבלה לך תודי לקראת קלה בני שבת לקבלה. Having welcomed the presence of Shabbat, we now encourage you to turn to one another and welcome each other. If you see some new faces, we encourage you to introduce yourselves. Wish everyone a Shabbat Shalom, a Shabbat of peace. Shabbat Shalom, Mom and Dad, particularly from Peter, but also from me. I love you guys. And Ronnie, if you're watching too, of course.
And then you're going to stay.
Shabbat Shalom to all of you joining us online. We're so happy to have you with us. We remain standing as we return to our seats and begin our evening service proper. We remain standing with the Baruch Hu, which Ryan will help us lead. Yai la lai 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 lai. Yai la lai 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 lai. Yai la lai 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 lai. Yai la lai 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 lai. Yai la lai 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 lai. Yai la lai 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 lai. Yai la lai 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 lai. Yai la lai 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 lai. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Turn to page 149 as we read together the words at the top of the page. Praise to you, Adonai our God,
from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. Creator of the tide of time and light, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows.
Baruch atah Adonai, hama'ariv aravi.
Amen. Before we move into the next blessing, Ahavat Olam on page 150, first I want to say, Ryan, it's okay. You can scoot a little closer to the microphone. A little closer. There you go. Not for this one, but we're going to be rolling from this into the Shema, obviously one of the central elements of our service. And one of the things that is the core theme of this blessing of Ahavat Olam, which describes this everlasting love between God and the Jewish people, are the expressions of that love through Torah, through sacred study, to mitzvot, to the deeds that go along with that study, and for chukim and umishpatim, for laws and commandments that bind us to one another. And it is all of these things that Ryan is opting into tomorrow and has worked so hard to learn and to know and to bring close to him, bring close to his family. And so it's a special moment and a special opportunity to highlight all of the many things that go into what it means to be Jewish, whether it's thoughts, ideas, feelings, or actions. So if you'll join me on page 150, Ahavat Olam. Ahavat Olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha ונשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו ובהם נגע יומם ולילה, נגע יומם ולילה. ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל, אוהב עמו ישראל. We now rise together as a community for our proclamation of oneness, the Shema, page 152. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod, Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Please be seated. Continue with the Ve'ahavta on the following page.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ושוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Adonai Elohechem emet. All right, you're good to go. You can go and return to your family. It was a nice warm-up for tomorrow morning.
Yes, looking forward. And we continue with the words of Mi Hamoha. And as we celebrate Ryan, the Shabbat, and his bar mitzvah, we think about what it means to pass on Judaism to the next generation. And when we do that, we think about where we came from as well, the journey of our people through the desert, across the sea, to freedom, and how we continue today to be able to live a life of Judaism. And as we celebrate passing that on to you, let us sing together joyously the words of Mi Hamocha on page 158. We all need shelter sometimes. Whether that's shelter from a storm, a physical storm as we experienced last week here in Los Angeles, or an internal storm, or a storm that surrounds us, whether it be at work, in our family lives, in our personal lives. Sometimes you need a little bit of shelter, a place of safety, a place of comfort, and most importantly on this Shabbat, a place of rest. A rest from the storm, the ability to recharge, renew, and then step back out. Because we always have to step back out. We got to face the storm as well. So we join together on our prayer for safety, for sanctuary, for peace, and for rest.
Ashkivenu, page 160. Ashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu Lishalom V'hamidenu Shomreinu Lechaim Ashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu Lishalom V'hamidenu Shomreinu Lechaim. Ushmor Tzeiteinu Uvoeinu Lechaim Ulshalom Me'ata ve'ad olam. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu Lishalom V'hamidenu Shomreinu Lechaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu Lishalom V'hamidenu Shomreinu Lechaim. And oftentimes, that place of sanctuary that we seek to find can be found within ourselves, within our hearts, within the inner depths of our souls. And perhaps one of the better opportunities to be able to enter into that place, to leave aside the storms that surround us, is at this moment in the service, during the tefillah or the Amidah, known as the standing prayer. And I invite you all to take this opportunity to turn inwards, to pray with the words that we have on the page, whether the words passed down by tradition or more modern and contemporary words, which you can find on the left side of the page in your prayer book, or simply to just be, and to just be in that place. And so we'll join together with Adonai Sifatai on page 164 and invite us all to please rise. And after singing this together, we'll continue praying silently with whichever words or lack of words you feel most comfortable with before coming back together on page 180. And I invite you to feel comfortable to continue praying even if the music comes in underneath you, and also to invite you all to be seated once you've finished your prayers. Ya-na-na-na-na-na-na Adonai, Ya-na-na-na-na-na Sfatai Tiftach, Ya-na-na-na-na-na Ufi Yagi Tehilatecha, Ya-na-na-na-na-na Adonai, Ya-na-na-na-na-na Sfatai Tiftach, Ya-na-na-na-na-na Ufi Yagi Words for You, Leratzon, can be found on page 180. You, Leratzon. Meditations of my heart be acceptable to you, O God, my rock and my redeemer. You, Leratzon.
And with our hearts full of prayer, we now turn our thoughts to those in our community in need of healing, of body, of mind, and of spirit. This week, we think of John Altschul, Aaron Airnow, Gary Ashland, Stephen Baird, Marion Barak, Joan Bergman, Elaine Blott, Latrice Bloom, Louise and Wayne Cantrell, Michael Dreyer, Tino Felipe, Harav Devora Masha Bat Ita Reisel, Robert Greenberg, Heidi Kebis and Seema Lehman, Elkabat Hezkiah, Adi Lelyveld, Cantor Pavlinsky, Peter Mackler, Larry Mendelson and Zachary Pierce, Vitaly Popov, Tammy Rabowski, Keith Rand, Ben Reback, Arlene Regan, Ivan Rosenberg, Richard Ross, Gerald Salzman, Lowell Selvin, Miles Sen, Karen Shanbrom and Edie Schumann, Henry Sommerfeld, Harriet Stein, David Suriel, Stephen Valentino, David Herschel Vibasha, Philip Windsor, and Eitan Wolf. If there are any other names that you are thinking of, I invite you to share them now. And if you're joining us online, I encourage you to think of those names in your heart or share them with us in the chat if you can. And the words to our healing prayer can be found in your insert.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. So nice to have you with us. This week we are in the midst of our journey through the book of Exodus as the Israelite people prepare the various sacred instruments and garments to guide their ritual practice in the wilderness. Now, since Ryan will offer us some wonderful teaching about this section of Torah, I will not belabor it too much. Instead, tonight I would like to focus on a unique element of this Shabbat, which is often known as Shabbat Zachor, or the Shabbat of Remembrance, being the Shabbat right before our very joyful holiday of Purim. Now, the special readings for the Shabbat all center around and are connected to the frayed historical relationship between the Israelites and the ancient nation of Amalek, or you might hear them referred to as the Amalekites. Now, the story actually began a few weeks ago, not a few weeks ago in terms of historical time, but a few weeks ago in terms of our Torah reading cycle, when we read of a brief but fraught encounter with this kind of mysterious nation known as Amalek. Earlier in the book of Exodus, we read, Then Amalek came and fought with Israel at Rephidim. That's all it says. And then this brief mention is then expanded later on in the Torah, in the book of Deuteronomy, where we read, Remember, Zachor. Now you see where the name of the Shabbat comes from. Zachor, remember what Amalek did to you on your journey after you left Egypt, how undeterred by fear of God, Amalek surprised you on the march when you were famished and weary and cut down all the stragglers in your rear. Therefore, when Adonai your God grants you safety from all your enemies around you in the land that the Eternal is giving you as a hereditary portion, you shall blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven. Do not forget. And the conflict doesn't even end there. Further along, as we move past the Torah into the Nevi'im, the prophet section of our sacred text, the Hebrew Bible, we read in the book of Samuel, in the early days of Saul's reign as king in Israel, that Saul is commanded to enact what is described in the book of Deuteronomy and to wipe out this nation. Thus says the Eternal of hosts, this is from the book of Samuel, I am exacting the penalty for what Amalek did to Israel, for the assault they made upon them on the road on their way up from Egypt. Now go, attack Amalek, and prescribe all that belongs to them. Spare no one, but kill alike men and women, infants and sucklings, oxen and sheep, camels and donkeys. Not exactly the most uplifting of texts in our tradition. So why do we read these special verses on the Shabbat? Well, for the ancient rabbis, as some of you took part in my Midrash class that I've been teaching, and this is something that we've been talking about, all of the texts are actually connected. Even though we might think of them as being different books along a shelf, in fact, in the minds of the ancient rabbis, there were connections between all of the different books, all of the different genres of literature that we have in our sacred tradition. And so for them, a particular character in the Purim story named Haman. All right, let's try that again. There we go. We got to practice for Sunday. They see Haman. There we go. As seen as a descendant of Amalek in his attempts to wipe out the Jewish people. And this is the way our oral tradition, the many texts from the ancient rabbis, understands Haman as being the next in a long line of oppressors and threats. Now, in general, this call to memory on Shabbat Zachor is an opportunity to remember the immense hatred and subjugation that has indeed followed the Jewish people for millennia. Now, this opportunity to think about this is very important here and now in our day, as we too have witnessed the upsurge in hatred and anti-Semitism in recent years. But there is another darker side of this call to remembrance. And I think it peeked through in the text that I brought earlier. And this darker side includes the call to wipe out Amalek. And in the mind of our rabbis, the mitzvah, and it is truly seen as a mitzvah, as a commandment, as an obligation, is to wipe out any member of the Amalek nation, any Amalekite one is supposed to have come into contact with. This is seen as an obligation written in our Torah, and even if this member of Amalek is a child. On the second side, the other darker element of this Shabbat and this holiday are the parts of the Purim story, parts of the book of Esther that we will not be including in our wonderful spiel this coming Sunday, which I hope many of you will be here to enjoy, which is a violent uprising of the Jewish community in Persia. Towards the end of the book, we hear of the rampage that the Jewish community goes on as very much an act of defense, but also I think many of us would shudder to read the descriptions of this violence and parts of the text that aren't often cited, aren't often lifted up in Purim. So we read, throughout the provinces of King Ahasuerus, the Jews mustered in their cities to attack those who sought their hurt, and no one could withstand them, for the fear of them had fallen upon all the peoples. Indeed, all the officials of the provinces, the satraps, the governors, and the king's stewards showed deference to the Jews. So on and so forth, and we continue to read, so the Jews struck at their enemies with the sword, slaying and destroying. They wreaked their will upon their enemies. In the fortress Shushan, the Jews killed a total of 500 men. And then it goes on to list the names of the 10 sons of Haman, who indeed were hanged. Again, not exactly the most, certainly PG text, but also not exactly the most encouraging, uplifting, peaceful, compassionate text. Now, for centuries, this call to physical violence was treated within our tradition as what we see them as here, as texts, as stories, as metaphors, and in many ways, in particular with the book of Esther, fantasies of rebellion in response to centuries of subjugation and violence. But this week, this call to violence was seen by many not as metaphorical, not as an encouragement of strength, but as literal. And many of us watched in horror as far-right extremist Jews in Israel terrorized the Palestinian Arab town of Hawara, part of a recent upsurge in violence that has only served to further entrench this vicious cycle of violence, trauma, and anger that has plagued the land of Israel for far too long. They enacted in deeds what was expressed in words by Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, that this village should be wiped out, not by just extremist citizens, but by the Israeli military itself. Now, some might be quick to say that these folks who engaged in this form of terrorism are not Jews. They don't hold by the values that we associate with our Judaism, although they did indeed pause their violence and rioting to pray the evening service, the Mariv service. But the harsh reality is that they are a part of us, whether we like it or not, whether we're proud of it, which we certainly are not. And in this event, we see a reminder, a zikaron, as part of this Shabbat of remembrance, that despite the values of peace and compassion that we profess as part of our sacred tradition, we too are capable of the atrocities assigned to Amalek in the Torah. In fact, many of the Midrashim talking about Amalek, which over the course of time, we came to understand that Amalek was no longer a nation, and so that mitzvah, that commandment to wipe them out, no longer applied, that it actually turns inward, that we are constantly in a battle with an Amalek that resides within ourselves, seen perhaps as the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, or perhaps the anger and the desire to oppress and to exploit those who are in need, or those who are in a situation of lesser power. And so on this Shabbat, this serves as a reminder to us to remain vigilant and to oppose all forms of extremist violence and hatred, no matter where it finds purchase, and even if it is spoken in the name and in the language of the values we hold so dearly. So we enter into this Shabbat Zachor with mixed emotions. We must carry with us the sadness and sorrow as many Jews around the world mourn the loss of those attacked in Israel. We also carry the anger and the indignation at the violence perpetrated by Jews in the name of God and Zionism. And we must also find the joy that is ingrained in this month of Adar, a joy that is doubled in this community by being able to welcome Ryan Cohen Jordan as a full member and a fully obligated member of our community just tomorrow morning. So on this Shabbat Zachor, this Shabbat of remembrance, let us remember the work that still needs to be done, both here and abroad. And let us hold one another with all of these complicated emotions that come to us in this moment. Because although it is not always as clear as black and white, and we have to hold mourning and sadness and the need for protection with our anger at what our brethren have committed, supposedly in our name, it's not always as clear as black and white. It is indeed shades of gray. But sometimes righteousness and justice can also be seen as clearly as the flames of our Shabbat candle, as the flame of the Havdalah candle that we will light tomorrow evening. And when we see it, we must do something about it. Shabbat Shalom. At this point in our service, I'm going to turn over the microphone to a member of our Board of Trustees, Janine Snyder, who will offer some announcements about the goings-on in our community.
Good evening. I'm Janine Snyder, and it's my honor to be on the Board of Trustees. And on behalf of the board, I want to wish you all a joyous, wonderful Shabbat Shalom. Thank you to Mark Cohen and Tim Jordan for sponsoring tonight's Oneg flowers in honor of the bar mitzvah of Ryan, their son. And tomorrow, Ryan will have his bar mitzvah tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., and we will be celebrating that with Ryan Jordan Cohen, his dad, Mark Cohen, and Timothy Jordan at 10 a.m. And you're invited to join us. Tonight's Oneg is also being sponsored by Peter Mackler in memory of his mother, Lillian Feinberg Mackler, on her yurt site. And as always, thank you to Travis for running our tech and Lisa for her heartfelt musical accompaniment. Yay. Okay, Purim's here. And we will be here on Sunday starting at 5:30 p.m. to celebrate. Bring your Ray-Ban and bring your surfboard and join us because we're taking a trip to Shushan via the beach. The Beach Boys, that is. And so Purim with a special Middle Eastern dinner. And then at 6:30, the Megillah reading and Beach Boys, Boy Chicks go to Shushan Purim Spiel, and a bunch of us will be celebrating that in costume. So everybody, wear your surfing costume. Don't miss it. It's funny. You'll laugh at us and with us. And be sure to join Rabbi Levy online for after we celebrate the Ha 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 of Purim. then it's important for us to study and learn the whole Megillah class on the actual day of Purim. He'll be diving deep into the book of Esther and the role it has played in Jewish thought for centuries. Saturday, March 11th at 1 p.m., we'll gather to make another 500 lunches for the Hollywood Food Coalition here at the temple. You got to smear some peanut butter and spoon some jelly with us. We hope you'll take the opportunity to fulfill the special Purim mitzvah of giving gifts to those in need by supporting us that day and sending out 500 bags to the Hollywood Food Coalition. On March 12th, our book circle will gather online at 4 p.m. This month we are reading Dinners with Ruth, a memoir by Nina Totenberg. And finally, be sure and mark your calendars for a special online class March 22nd and March 29th, taught by student Rabbi Frankie Salzman. They will be teaching about how Jewish tradition approaches the topic of gender identification throughout the ages. You won't want to miss that. It's important for all of us to be absolutely up to date on gender identification as it relates to Judaism. As always, we hope you'll keep up to date on all things happening within our sacred community at visiting our website, kol-ami.org. That's kol-ami.org. Look for all the information for upcoming classes, the Scholar in Resident Weekend at the end of March, Passover, Seder, and a trip to the Reagan Library for Yom HaShoah. You can register online, and be sure all programs you have to go online to register, so be sure and go to the website. And while you're visiting the website, please consider giving a donation to support all of the work we do here. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you so much, Janine. As we move into the concluding portion of our service, it's my honor to invite up Leonard Seelig, who is celebrating a very special anniversary, an anniversary of his bar mitzvah. And so I invite Leonard up to open the ark, and as the ark is opened, I invite you to please rise. Leonard, what year anniversary is it?
March 6, 1982.
Wonderful. Aleinu leshabeach la'adon hakol, ha'teitz gedula leotzer breshit, shelo asanu kegoyei haratzot, velo samanu kemishpechot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkeinu kahem, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים מודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, ונאמר היה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. Of course. Congratulations. You may be seated. Our thoughts now turn to those whom we've loved and lost, as our memories of them still shine out into the dark. On this Shabbat, Congregation Kol Ami is remembering Lillian Feinberg Mackler, mother of Peter Mackler, Ira M. Horwitz, stepfather of Marianne Lowenthal, Roy Werble, father of Lee Werble, Joanne Weiss-Crum, cousin of Stephen Weiss, Michael Igdaloff, the son of Dr. Susan Igdaloff, and Jeannie Cole, Ralph Ellis Freeman, father of Mark Freeman, Zelda Schechtman, aunt of Sam Feibisch DeWitt, Lois Dorkin, aunt of Stephen Weiss, Renee Merowitz, aunt of Keith Rand, Milton S. Elfenbein, uncle of Erwin Alexander, Harold Jakubowicz, great uncle of David Kaminsky, Rose Brodsky, grandmother of David Glickman, Simon Kornbluth, uncle of Henry Sommerfeld, Ken Bash, friend of John Altschul, Rob Schlesinger, cousin of Iris Schlesinger, Nathan Zamastansky, grandfather of Glenn Rosenblum, Betty Rosenberg, grandmother of David Levy, Al Leviton's uncle of Stuart Leviton, Ann Rubin, grandmother of Michael Silverman, Philip Glickman, father of Alexandra Glickman, and Elizabeth Toller, the mother of Martin Toller. We also recall and are saying Kaddish at this time for Keith Cantrell, Leona Bander, Marlene Bram, Herb Jacobson, Richard Frank, Lou Vicinelli, Dave Hall, Howard Romanoff, Greg Sonkin, Ruth Forster Williams, Reba Goldman, Michael Simmental, Victor Escobar, Alvin Gross, Ernie Benson, Kathy Weiss, Ellen Metzner, Janice Hooten-Levi, Anton Malley, Josh Kaplan, Don Hollis, Jason Thomas Lodge, Elaine Cohen, Maeve Eisenberg, Barton Cogan, Dabby Blatt, Stephen Shapiro, Carol Rosenthal, Marilyn Horowitz, Murray Blank, Stephen Hochstein, Ernie Sosnick, Stephen Wright, Scott Moged, Gloria Brown, Rosina Spitzer, and Lizzie Taylor. To these names, we add those of your loved ones. If there's anyone you're remembering at this time, I invite you to share their name as my hand passes over you. And those of you joining us online, I invite you to share the name of your loved ones in the comments section or in the chat. As we remember them, we also celebrate and sanctify life as we turn to page 598 and rise together as a community for the mourners' Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divrach chutei v'yamlich malchutei, B'chai echon u'vyom echon u'v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, b'agala u'v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'alam u'almei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shmei d'kudasha b'richu, le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, Da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'mromav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, v'imru amen. May the one who creates harmony and peace on high bring peace to us, to all of Israel, to all those who mourn, and to all of humanity, to which we say, Amen. Amen. Please be seated. Our concluding song tonight is not just a song, but a prayer that amidst this broken world, that another one will rise up, a world founded in chesed, in loving compassion, and in peace. You can find the words to Olam Chesed in the insert of your seat bulletin. Olam Chesed Yibane, Yalalai, 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 Olam Chesed Yibane, Yalalai, 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 Olam Chesed Yibane, Yalalai, 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 Olam Chesed Yibane, Yalalai, Yalalai, Yalalai. I will build this world from love, Yalalai, Yalalai, Yalalai. And you must build this world from love, Yalalai, Yalalai, Yalalai. If we build this world from love, Yalalai, 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 then God will build this world from love, Yalalai, Yalalai, Yalalai.
now invite up Ryan to say the motzi with us as we bless our bread and the oneg that we will be sharing together in a few moments. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz.
Amen.
Go ahead and grab some.
Brian, you take the first bite. You can give it a rip. There you go. There you go. I hope many of you will join us tomorrow morning for a very special Shabbat morning service, and hope those of you online will join us online, or perhaps come join us in person and feel the magic here in the sanctuary.
This evening, we have prayed and created this holy space as we have begun to celebrate and bring in the joy of Adar that Rabbi Levi mentioned, with recognizing this moment for Ryan. So let us go this evening in peace and in comfort so we can return tomorrow to continue that celebration and continue that joy and continue to rebuild this world together. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Kenny Ratzon.